Okay, it's always hard to do. Max is back, for better or worse. Okay, something has gone wrong here, and I cannot copy and paste for some reason. I kind of feel like I'm being deliberately thwarted and am somehow being prevented from putting anything up on my blog and or uh, communicating as effectively as I would like to. Not that I probably have all that much to say, but in any case, I don't like being thwarted. So I'm going to avoid hitting trigger words to the extent I can, and hope it's fortunate that I actually have a very small uh, audience, readership, whatever, and those who need to and want to know how to find me, and hopefully others will not notice me, and I can kind of just quietly slip behind the wires of the enemy lines, so to speak. So that's my plan. We'll see how that goes. I have a lot of stuff up on the screen. I cannot cover it in depth, but it will give you an idea of what I am seeing on this side of the pond. All right, so I have to change screens. I've got all this stuff spread out all over Hell and Gone here. Uh, there, that's better. It's unnerving to me to watch myself talk. All right, so we will begin. Uh, I think it cannot be long now. Shit is going to hit the fan. Um, I have talked, you all know Sipsy. I've talked a lot about Sipsy, put up a lot of stuff by Sipsy. This particular piece is dated Wednesday, September 21st. Sipsy has passed. He died a while back, long, courageous battle. And he fought the enemy up to the last breath, I'm sure. Uh, and so his legacy has been taken on by his son, whose name at this moment I can't remember. In any case, this is a post on Sipsey Street Irregulars. Y'all know how to find that. And Sipsey's son, whatever his name is, which I don't, for some reason, I don't remember. He says, a couple of days ago, I received some news that ended up shaking me to my very core. After a great deal of consideration, I have decided to close the doors of the Sipsey Street Irregulars. Effective immediately, this blog is not updated or monitored. I know this is quite sudden, but I know you guys will keep on going just fine without it. Freedom is not like a game of cards where you can pick up and walk away when you're done playing. But as it stands now, I do not know if I have any future high-profile plans within the liberty movement. Time will tell. There is great potential here. Everyone sees it, which is why the liberty movement, attracts so many people. When you remove failure as an option, your way becomes much clearer. The movement simply cannot afford to fail. Doing so will put this country in a darkness that may take generations to come out from. You can kill the man, but you cannot kill the idea. The idea of the 3% of determined and armed men and women was universal because the idea of liberty for all is universal. Mike reminded everyone that a gun in your hand is a preferable option to a life on your knees. Take that lesson and the many others on this blog and use them. Goodbye and the best luck to you. Keep it legal, keep it local, support small patriot veteran-run businesses when you can. Try to have fun once in a while. And if the government is going to make of you a criminal, be the best one you can be. All right. A couple of days ago, he says, I received some news that ended up shaking me to my very core. All right, I do not know what news was received, but I know if he got that news, a lot of other patriots also did. I don't need to know the details of it. It is serious enough, however, that what he's saying here is failure is not an option. He cannot. This mission cannot afford to fail. When you remove failure as an option, your way becomes much clearer. This movement simply cannot fail. So he's stepping away from whatever he's been doing to facilitate doing something that is more important. So that's the first message I want to impart here. Whatever is going on is so serious. There is no further time left to dilly-dally and fuck around with this stuff. The next piece I need to find here in my bunch of stuff I've got up here. I don't even, as always, okay, so I'll just go across the screen. There is a new video up from Brother Nathaniel. Y'all know how to find that. And he is saying Hillary Clinton wants your guns. And talking about that. You need to see that. This was up yesterday. Very brief notice. It says read the comments. Goes to a YouTube.
and millions of others.
Which is the full speech of Hillary Clinton rally in Orlando. We're not going to pay any attention to that word, but we are going to look at some of the comments. Watched in mute, only came to see the old sociopath's crazy left eye go wild. Should have known cameraman was told he would commit suicide by shooting himself 2 times in the head and then jumping off a cliff if he went for any close-ups. I also feel sorry for the tens and tens of actors in the room who had to suffer through the obsessive lying without without being able to mute it. Hope the pay was worth it. Another small rally, and the sickly pander queen lasts about 29 minutes, now off. Not even worth commenting, only that she sucks. I'm not sure which of these comments are supposed to be the most relevant. I'm not sure she can dispel what happened before her and Bill came to Washington, D.C. I had a friend that grew up in Little Rock when Bill was governor. She talked about it for years, and I paid no attention. In the last year and a half, I started doing my own research. I stayed away from any mainstream sites. I watch no MSM, mainstream media, on TV. I cannot believe how clueless I was. These 2 people are criminals, and both should have been put in prison a long time ago. Some of the comments that I saw on here just yesterday have been removed. These are the milder ones. Somebody says, I came for the crazy left eye. Mute is a must for this video, I warned you. Okay, so that's what happened in Orlando with Hillary. We'll just get rid of that, and we'll go and look at some headlines. And this is not the important stuff. This is just partly what is out there. Okay, what are these videos? The entire island of Puerto Rico is without power. Y'all know that? A massive blackout hit Puerto Rico Wednesday afternoon, leaving at least 1.5 million people without power. An investigation is underway by power company, Electric Power Authority, which provides electricity for the entire island. According to the Orlando Sentinel, it is unclear when power will be restored, but the company said their priority is to restore service as soon as possible. Blackout was caused by a fire started by energy switches at a major facility, which damaged power lines. Power company said 2 transmission lines of 230,000 volts have been damaged. The blackout began at about 2:30 p.m., Univision reported. There's a link to that. Governmentslaves.info/massive blackouts hits Puerto Rican millions without power. 24 hours later, those millions are still without power. And I don't believe one word of This is Party Line about energy switches at a major facility damaging power lines. Lavoie assassination, forensic proof released. There are new videos up on that. Sorry, I cannot provide them, but you can find them. Next headline. Have you been keeping up with this creepy clown thing? Looking at that briefly. All over America, sick and twisted people are dressing up like creepy clowns in order to frighten the living daylights out of others. This trend started back in August, and since then social media has helped it spread like wildfire. So far there have been creepy clown sightings in 11 different states, and Mississippi and Kentucky have been added to the list since my last article. A lot of young kids seem to think that this is a great idea for a prank, but authorities are taking the creepy clown phenomenon very seriously because in recent days the threats of violence have become much more chilling. Individuals posing as creepy clowns on social media are openly naming specific schools that they plan to target and are threatening to commit horrific acts of violence. That may sound like an interesting plot for a Hollywood horror movie, but in real life, these kinds of threats have very serious consequences. I didn't track this back to the source, but I can easily tell you that this is Daisy Luther writing this. On Monday, several schools in Alabama were placed on lockdown due to threats from a group known as Flomo Clown. A number of Alabama schools were on lockdown on Monday after a series of Facebook posts from users posing as clowns threatened local children with violence, shutting down schools because of this. Posts on the group Flomo Clown warned that clowns may show up at 2 schools in the Birmingham area, and one student alerted the local police. Fortunately, authorities were able to identify the people that were making these threats. The police discovered that 2 juveniles and 1 adult were involved, and so far 1 arrest has been made in that case. But that isn't the only example of creepy clowns threatening to commit violence at schools. A short-lived Facebook account under the name of Biggerman Clownford issued a profanity-laced warning to 5 specific schools in the Montgomery, Alabama area on September 17th. The following comes from a local Montgomery news report. And one of the sources for this is the economiccollapseblog.com. I know Daisy Luther wrote that, and you can find that on her site as well. Going on. This is short, it's stupid. I'm putting this on my tombstone, somebody says. My avatar was old and a pain in the ass, so I shot the bastard. Sorry to inform you of that. No, I'm not contemplating it for another 20 years, and by then I'll have to hire a hitman. You know, it's just a shame that real living human beings have been battered and forced into this position of having to take up avatars, fake names, fake identities, in order to dare communicate with one another. But that's what's happened. It's happened out on the street. In gangland, everybody uses an avatar. The last thing you want is your real name known by anyone. Yeah, so that's how it is in the crimey underworld, and that's how it is in the online world. We've been forced to abandon our own identities. You know, I've had a really personal reason for being so determined that I was going to be a real person online. It was really important to me to be an honest, living, real human being online. And I had a reason for that. Going on. By the way, I still have that reason. Going on. This is just some of the bullshit, you know, that the American people and people all over the world are struggling with. And this is petty stuff. All of this is petty stuff. I will go to another set of headlines, though, which is more significant. Okay, here. Oh, where are we going? This is True News. TRUNEWS.com. True News. He doesn't always get it right, but a lot is. Top headlines: UN economists predict greatest debt jubilee in history. Huh. Um, and where's the stuff on here about this is a minor thing that we have covered before on Max's thread that had to do with the Baltic Dry Index. I'm sure you all remember about all of that. And I'm sure you all are aware that Hanjin, a shipping company, has gone belly up. And there are all these huge container ships still stranded and docked all over, unable to unload. Korean Airlines has offered to put up $54 million loan to save the cargo. And the Baltic Dry Index has plummeted out of sight, which means that worldwide shipping has essentially ceased. We've known it was squeezed down to a dwindle, and I think that this time it will not revive. I think it cannot revive. The city of Charlotte, North Carolina, is in rioting that resulted in the state in a state of emergency. I will look at that a little bit more closely. State of emergency was declared in Charlotte, North Carolina, Wednesday night after protest following the police killing of Keith Scott turned violent. Began with police killing of Keith Scott, age 43, after he refused to drop a handgun. Peaceful rally in response turned violent. Protesters threw rocks and bottles at police in riot gear, smashed windows and doors, and looted stores in downtown Charlotte. Officers fired rubber bullets, tear gas, flashbang grenades, and used pepper spray to disperse the crowd. City officials: one protester was shot and gravely wounded by a civilian, and 4 police officers suffered non-life-threatening injuries. Scott's wife's statement: family devastated, appealing for calm. We have more questions than answers about Keith's death. Protesters smashed windows and glass doors at a nearby Hyatt hotel. Slogan, "Black Lives Matter," was spray painted on windows. Governor Pat McCrory: any violence directed toward our citizens or police officers or destruction of property should not be tolerated. Should not be tolerated. McCrory declared a state of emergency, deploying the National Guard and Highway Patrol officers to the city to help restore peace. William Barber, president of the state's chapter of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, NAACP, says, "We call for the full release of all facts available." This is some of George Soros' cash contributions that paid for this. And since when can a mayor well, I guess he wasn't the mayor, he was the governor, deploy the national, okay, I'm wrong there. He was the governor, and he could declare this state of emergency, and he did. And he did deploy the National Guard. And, that creates martial law right there. The article does go on, but I think we've covered the gist of it, and we all know how all this came about. A little more detail. Demonstrators were also seen looting a convenience store after smashing its windows, and a shop that sells athletic wear for fans of Charlotte's National Basketball League team, the Hornets. Others set fire to trash cans. It was the second night of unrest in North Carolina's largest city and one of the biggest U.S. financial centers. Several protesters and 16 officers were Tuesday night. Deployed the National Guard and Highway Patrol officers to the city to help restore peace. Charlotte's mayor, Jennifer Roberts, oh my God, I have come to where I just hate. I just automatically cringe at the women who have achieved these public offices, whoever they are. So, I am prematurely being judgmental toward this Jennifer Roberts. But every female politician on the scene anywhere is, that I do know much about, is absolutely an abomination. What have we got here? Miniature Hillarys. Charlotte's mayor, Jennifer Roberts, was considering a curfew as Bank of America told employees not to report to work at its uptown offices, local media reported. There have also been protests in Tulsa, Oklahoma, in recent days, demanding the arrest of a police officer seen in a video last week fatally shooting an unarmed black man who had his hands in clear view at the time. The deaths add to a torrent of accusations over racial bias in U.S. law enforcement and calls for greater police accountability for the killings of black people. This is all leftist generated and inspired, created, socially engineered bullshit. Nonetheless, it is happening, and people are dying as a result of it. And the cities are in uproar as a result of it. President Barack Obama spoke by telephone on Wednesday with the mayors of Charlotte and Tulsa, a White House official said. Yeah, I betcha he did. Okay, moving on. U.S. and South Korea prepare preemptive strike against North Korea. There's some good evidence. I have seen a lot of information related to that. And here we go. Definitely, this is the shell game. First, we had the headline on the same page, UN economists, note that, UN economists predict greatest debt jubilee in history. What the hell are they talking about there? All right, so you watch that with one hand, then watch the other hand. Here we go, this is the shell game. U.S. and South Korea prepare preemptive strike against North Korea. A lot of stuff up about that. They may be doing that. Scrolling down, though, to another headline I just will read. Former head of NATO. Remember him? I do. He's saying that U.S. must police the world. NATO is a awful organization, as you all know. What NATO is doing on the one hand, and what is being done over, but what they want you to watch is U.S. and South Korea preparing this preemptive strike against North Korea. The more significant issue, the most significant issue is actually taking place in Syria and involves NATO, U.S., provoking the bear, Russia. That's much more significant on several levels. On a spiritual level, that's where the action is. That's where the whole seat of the main action on the spiritual level is in Syria. I may say a little bit more about that in a minute. However, this is probably what is going to happen. It comes up in a Quail alert. You can accept this or not. But I think this is where actually there will be an action. You remember not too long ago that the Pope went to Poland and traveled around, did various things. That's one big indicator. Uh, this quail alert, as I said, you can take it or leave it. Some info from my friends in military. This person is speaking anonymously. Info from my friends in military. They are stationed in the name of some Polish place, which I cannot pronounce, which is northwest corner of Poland and is exactly where NATO troops are at the moment. I spoke with him yesterday evening, and he said that next week all the military complex is to be closed for any movement. All soldiers to be battle ready and wait for orders inside. On 10th of October, they have scheduled a trip to other parts of Poland, but they don't have a clue what is going on. For past weeks, they had really intense fire training. He said that he never shoot that many rounds in past 8 years, like in past few weeks. He serves as driver engineer, and they trained them like SWAT team. One more thing, he said. They ordered us to say to our families that we may go away for a long time and prepare them for that. Steve, the movement of troops in Poland is really huge. We see Abrams tanks on rail trucks, military signs on road. We are afraid that Poland is going to be used as next battleground, just like Kosovo, Yugoslavia, Croatia. We have some info about Khazarian Jews that plan to move to Poland from Europe before Muslims start the full-scale attack. But first they need to get rid of young Polish Christians and patriots. Do you remember the 150,000 Polish Christian army marching and chanting, "God honor country"? We are the biggest Christian nation in Europe, and the satanic cabal want us to be gone. It does look like they already started World War III in the Middle East, and they will carry on in Europe to kill Polish Christians. They will use us as a meat cannon, just like they have been doing for past centuries. Steve, it is getting hot, and I think you know it. There is more going on. May God cover us with his mercy and protect us against the evil. God bless you, your family, and your work. Signed, Lucas, spelled Lukas. This quail alert actually totally has the ring of truth to my ears. It is backed up with much all the information that I have seen probably for 2 years back. I believe that this will be where NATO will strike. Talking about NATO striking here. Just saying. All right, clicking out of that. There is a curious video up. By the way, it occurs to me that before I forget, I want to say that one of the best reporters, best Watchman reporters is Paul Joseph Watson, and you can find him on Alex Jones's channel or wherever that is. He's got it right. He's got all of it right. Okay, I am going to click on this very peculiar link here, which is being reported quite widely. It is on True News. Trump will go 26th. Weird hack. This is dated September 22nd. Man records weird message allegedly playing repeatedly on radio. Trump will go 26th. Led speculations that the station had been hacked. The message was heard on 16:30 a.m. That's a station, I guess. At 7 a.m. on Monday morning, and allegedly went on for a full 5 minutes. Chester Township, New Jersey, 16:30 a.m. radio station employees apparently had no idea that the message had been broadcast. A man driving on the New Jersey Turnpike appears to have recorded a radio message allegedly coming from his car radio, tuned to 16:30 a.m. Some interpret the message to state, Trump will go 26th. Questions were raised about whether the station had been hacked during the Monday morning radio show, but that has not been officially confirmed by the station. A YouTube clip featuring the seemingly computerized voice playing repeatedly as the driver reacts, "What is this?" he asks. Turns the radio off, but when he turns it back on, the message was still going. The driver expressed disbelief. Original report by Infowars.com. Bizarre message plays on hacked radio station. Now, part of this article has been deleted since I looked at it earlier. I'm going to click on this message, this video for a second. And all right, that's enough of that. The deal is, I think about the 26th, is that is supposed to be the date of the big Trump-Hillary debate. And Paul Joseph Watson is the one who found this information, and he has reported on it. Bedlam continues. I believe that the whole world is absolutely in bedlam. Everybody has got a piece of that little bedlam right on their front porch. Or even closer. It's there. It's just all bedlam. Okay, going on from that. I'm just going to keep talking, I guess, till I get to the end of these screens. You know, I don't plan what I going to say I don't have the or organization ability right now to do that. I just have to go with what is given me and hope for the best. There's another piece up, and this matters to all of us. The Day Zero Hedge Goes Dark by Robert Gore, and he's talking about this is on, y'all need probably to go there and read this yourself, straightlinelogic.com. Mainstream media's coverage of Hillary Clinton's medical travails offers yet another instance of its blatant bias and its distortion and outright suppression of the news. The roots of the captive mainstream media stretch back to the 1940s, which helps explain the warning prospects for dissemination of the truth in 2016. Veracity is the first casualty of war. During World War II, the government openly co-opted the media, including Hollywood, as propaganda organs. Radio and television stations and networks had to obtain permission from the Federal Communication Commission, FCC, to operate. They towed the government's World War II line. A few newspapers and individual journalists, notably H.L. Mencken and John T. Flynn, challenged it. But Roosevelt's pretense of being against U.S. involvement in the war, Pearl Harbor's vulnerability, and the alliance with Joseph Stalin, who was at least as bloodthirsty and tyrannical, massive firebombing of civilian populations in Germany and Japan, and the decision to deploy the atomic bomb should have raised far more questions than they did. I was a child in those days. Part of it, I wasn't even born yet, but this is historical truth and fact. Without missing a beat, the government transferred its World War II rationales for managing the news and media to the Cold War. The key figure of the era was Allen Dulles, the director of the CIA from 1953 until 1961. In 1977, Carl Bernstein of Watergate fame detailed the CIA's relationship with the press in the 1950s and 60s in a lengthy expose for the Rolling Stone. Dulles instituted a partnership, Operation Mockingbird, between the agency and the media. The agency would supply journalists with information and access to situations that would have been otherwise inaccessible for exchange, for on-the-ground intelligence, and the occasional performance of agency requests. Implicit in the arrangement, journalists would hew to the CIA line. A veritable who's who of the media elite embraced the arrangement. Per Bernstein, by far the most valuable of these associations, according to CIA officials, have been with the New York Times, CBS, and Time Incorporated. No questions were asked in the bland reports that the duly elected leaders of Iran and Guatemala had been disposed. CIA orchestrated operations. Nor were they asked in the early days of Vietnam, as the CIA set up shop in Saigon, and the press worried about falling dominoes in Southeast Asia. Some of the agency's screw-ups were too big to whitewash. After the Bay of Pigs fiasco, President Kennedy asked Dulles for his resignation. Dulla's subsequent membership on the Warren Commission, where he stage managed the investigation to its preordained conclusion, raised eyebrows. However, the raised eyebrow set were disparaged as conspiracy theorists, a term invented by the CIA to discredit anyone questioning the official version of anything. The Vietnam War was too extensive and lengthy to hide. As the years rolled on and the body count mounted, questions were asked. Journalists had remarkable latitude to roam, often accompanying military units to battle zones. They saw fighting firsthand and talked directly to the fighters. Their stories were a sharp contrast to the military's bland briefings in Saigon. That Vietnam was, at best, a hopeless quagmire, and probably a lost cause was a bottom-up realization. The soldiers and the in-field press covering them knew it long before the brass and its housebroken reporters. Publication of the Pentagon Papers in 1971 marked the media's finest hour in Vietnam. Its revelations of duplicity reinforced America's mood. By then, all it wanted from Vietnam was a graceful exit. After a 10-year hiatus dating from the end of the Cold War in 1991, the U.S. establishment acquired a new enemy. Despite the pyrotechnics of 9/11, the terrorists presented orders of magnitude less of a threat than the Axis powers in World War II or the Soviet Union during the Cold War. However, a war on a tactic, terrorism, can be waged anywhere and against anybody the government chooses. It can and apparently will go on forever. Victory in such a conflict being impossible to define, much less achieve. All this was obvious before the U.S. ventured into Afghanistan and Iraq, but few of the media questioned the conceptual basis of those forays. Judging by restrictions on civil liberties embedded in the Patriot Act, subsequent legislation, and judicial interpretations, ragtag terrorists whose main weapons are stolen artillery and firearms, improvised explosive devices, and blowing themselves up pose a greater threat than the U.S.'s World War II and Cold War foes, a measure of how captive the mainstream media has become. It labeled Edward Snowden a traitor for exposing the government's Orwellian surveillance in the name of fighting terrorism. Snowden should have been hailed. Such surveillance makes a free press impossible. If it cannot shield its secrets from the government, it cannot operate. What? For the press and freedom of press to mean anything, the media must be outside the government looking in. Currently, that characterization only applies to the independent segments of the media, mostly the internet, that takes a reflexivity and variable stance toward the powers that be, including the mainstream media. Call it the alternative media. What it lacks in the docile mainstream media's cherished access, it more that makes up for in pugnacity. The Drudge Report made a name for itself publicizing Bill Clinton scandals the mainstream media ignored. The Drudge Report is the most powerful and widely viewed alternative site. Zero Hedge, like the Drudge Report, aggregates news, analysis, and commentary from a variety of sources, but it also features its own analyses and comments. Zero Hedge has reposted Straight Line Logic articles. Financially oriented, Zero Hedge made its bones during the last crisis, which it saw coming well before it arrived. Its commentary and stories since on the government and Federal Reserve's responses, the bailout, stimulus, and quantitative easing, have been scathing. These two sites are the vanguard of the alternative media. Hundreds, perhaps thousands, of sites worldwide that probe virtually every idiocy and prevarication emanating not just from governments and central banks, but large corporations, academia, militaries, intelligence services, and the mainstream media itself. The alternative media has little capacity to generate original news coverage, although leaks, hacking, and videos have been invaluable. But publicly available material is virtually inexhaustible. It has become a giant thorn in the side of what it variously calls the establishment, the powers that be, the deep state, the empire, globalists, or the New World Order. Although not all in the alternative media support Donald Trump, they are united in their contempt for Hillary Clinton. Although not all in the alternative media support Donald Trump, they are united in their contempt for Hillary Clinton. Underline that. Their relentless skepticism, disclosures, and editorializing have been bastions for the Trump campaign. It's probably not an overstatement to say that campaign wouldn't be where it is without the alternative media. The established order recognizes the threat. Hillary Clinton's recent speeches condemning the alt-right and the basket of deplorables. Okay. Alt-right and basket of deplorables. I've been called a lot of things, but I never, who could have ever thought up that term? Basket of deplorables. And President Obama's comments Monday about unspecified blogs churning out a lot of misinformation confirmed the apprehension. My blog is shut down right now. I can't copy and paste. I can't do shit. So I'm just circumventing in this other way. Going on. Obama's comments Monday about unspecified blogs churning out a lot of misinformation confirmed the apprehension. The alt-right is part of the alternative media and takes a politically incorrect perspective on the mainstream's racial, ethnic, sexual, and gender catechism. As such, it makes the easiest target. However, it is not the establishment's real target. Obama gave up the game with the word misinformation. He's not worried about misinformation. If he were, Obamacare never would have become law. He's worried about correct information, also known as the truth. That's what Obama's worried about. He's worried about correct information, also known as the truth. The alternative press shatters the cozy arrangement midwifed by Alan Dulles between the government and the mainstream media. The biggest threat to powers that be is always the truth. Just as they will steal everything you've got, they will suppress the truth. The alternative media has gone from success to success. But if Trump is elected, it will probably mark an apotheosis. The establishment will neither forgive nor forget, and sooner or later the alternative media will train its sights on Trump himself. It's hard to believe that he won't give it reason to do so. Power does corrupt, especially for that segment of the alternative media with a more libertarian perspective. Alternative media hubris is an unaffordable luxury. The counterattack is coming. Take Hillary and Barack's word for it. And the alternative media is extraordinarily vulnerable. It can be silenced by someone pulling the plug on the internet or parts thereof, like a funds inaccessible message on our bank accounts. A site not available message may well greet us one morning when we try to pull up Zero Hedge. The rationale could be deplorable racism, sexism, homophobia, xenophobia, Islamophobia, or peddling what has been officially deemed misinformation. But make no mistake, the truth that emerges from the alternative media poses a grave threat to those who would rule us, and they know it. They know it. I think at some point when the shit goes down, they will pull the plug on the net. Maybe some of the commercial stuff will stay up. I don't know how extensive. They've already funneled it down a lot. I know that there is much news, information from the United States that is being bottled up and choked off. Is not moving to other parts of the world. And at some point here, and I think it'll be quite soon, but I believe that the net will go down, and how long it will stay down, I don't know. It might not come back up in our lifetimes. It just I don't know. I expect that, and I expect it viciously, and I expect it soon. And when these big sites go down, it may be possible. I think these big sites like Zero Hedge will go down first. I think people like Dave Hodges and Hagman will go down first. And these things may happen before the physical takedown. I don't see Dave Hodges. I don't see them storm into his office and physically yanking him out of his seat and dragging him off. That won't be the first step. They will take him down from online first, is how I see that kind of thing coming. Speaking of Dave Hodges, he one of his latest pieces, it's short. He says, Oath Keepers is one of my most valued organizations. They literally stand in the gap between Americans and genocide by reminding soldiers and policemen to honor their constitutional oath and not to obey illegal orders. I often wonder if history would have been different if Oath Keepers had a presence in Nazi Germany. In the following interview, I spoke with Jason Van Tettenhove, the media director for Oath Keepers. There are so many threats which put the American military and police at odds with the American people. Oath Keepers stand in the gap. This is a fascinating interview which covers a wide variety of current events. I have not listened to this yet, but I think that it is going to be extremely informative on a number of levels. And I think you all ought to go to Dave Hodges' place and find this video. It's also probably up on Oath Keepers' site. I haven't looked there, but it probably is. Oath Keepers remind the soldiers to disobey illegal orders. Come and take it. Let me just say that the official membership of Oath Keepers is the tiny tip of the spear in terms of the armed American patriots who are not all members of this organization. In fact, most of them are not. I'm going to try to keep doing these little video pieces for as long as I can. And maybe I can get my blog back up. I don't know. But we are in the last days. I think this is a true statement. Literally, these are the last days. Certainly of this segment of American history. We are in the last days. Something else is going to happen, and no one knows what. No one knows what. I think that the powers that be do not know what. They're still working their shell game and all of that. But I do not think that they know either how all this is going to turn out. And I believe that this is we are in the last days on an entirely other level as well. What we are seeing in the physical is the outplay of a greater battle, which is going on in an unseen dimension. And we know what the final outcome of that battle is, and because it cannot be anything else, Creator God will manifest complete victory over the Satan and his forces. But we don't know how that is going to look as it continues to take place and unfold. We are here as witnesses, and we are here as participants. And nobody can sit on the fence in this one. No one can sit on the fence in this one. Choices must be made. One must decide to stand or to fall, or to whatever. It's not optional. There's no way to get out of it. Remaining impartial, trying to maintain a neutral stance, trying to sit on the fence, trying to have a boot in each camp. Can't do that. Cannot do that. Not this time. You cannot serve God and mammon. All right, that's enough of that. Mainly, I just want to say I love you. All right. So for now, later, Gator. There's my out screen.